Hello and welcome to the equaliser Palace podcast. I'm Alfonso Greenbrook and today in Pod 7 I'll be looking over the result over Bournemouth by bringing you my match review, player rankings and my man of the match. As well as this, I'm also going to bring you an exclusive interview with Alan Pardew, Scott Dann and Christian Benteke after the game. So let's begin. An injury time header from Scott Dann snatched a deserved point for Crystal Palace as they got off the mark in the Premier League against Bournemouth. The Eagles skipper finally found a breakthrough that seemed destined not to arrive despite plenty of pressure from the host, who had fallen behind on 9 minutes when Joshua King drilled home. Yohan Cabaye missed a penalty and Dann saw a header scrambled off the line as Palace pressed for an equaliser, which finally came in the nick of time. The Cherries enjoyed a lively start and regularly found themselves with the ball in the final third during the opening 10 minutes, and that period ended with the opening goal. Andrew Sermon clipped a free kick into the area from the right, which was cleared by Christian Benteke to the edge of the area where Harry Artu was waiting. After cushioning the ball on his chest, he lobbed it into the path of King, who drilled a low shot on the angle past the outstretched glove of Steve Mondonda to grab an early goal. But the Eagles were handed a chance to quickly get back into the game just 4 minutes later when Benteke's shirt was pulled by Charlie Daniels inside the area, and Mike Dean pointed to the spot. Cabaye stepped up and saw his attempt saved by Artu Boric, who guessed the right way and got two hands to the ball as a golden chance went begging. The Polish stopper then went on to force another stop when Andros Townsend whipped a cross into the area from the right flank, which bent wickedly and nearly found the top corner. But the backpedalling keeper managed to palm it to safety. But 10 minutes before the break, it was the other Glasman who was called into action when the energetic Callum Wilson and King linked up to play in the former after a swift break. But they looked to slip in the ball under Mandanda, but the Frenchman anticipated it and managed to save his side from going 2 goals behind. Following that scare, King brushed a free kick from the edge of the area against the top of the netting, and Jason Punchin bent a shot well over the top as the Eagles returned to the changing room still searching for their first league goal of the campaign. Opting not to make any changes at the break, Pardew saw his team come out rejuvenated, and 5 minutes after the restart, Scott Dann nearly replicated his goal against the Cherries in last season's corresponding fixture, but Arthur was well placed to block it on the line before Simon Francis tied up. And then from another corner, Connor Wickham lashed a god opportunity over the bar when the ball dropped to his feet. Palace were much improved from their first half performance, and James MacArthur headed off target just before the hour mark, minutes before Benteke did the same from a punching corner. And with Bournemouth rocking, Steve Cook nearly sliced the ball into his own net, trying to clear a Papasore header, and from the resulting corner, a goalmouth scramble ensured that the Cherries were lucky to escape from. Time and again, the hosts carved open opportunities, but just couldn't finish them, and substitutes Wilfried Zaha and Chung Eung Lee created another on 74 minutes, while the South Korean screwed one just over the bar, and Townsend lashed another attempt into the side netting amid calls for a second penalty after Benteke tumbled in the area under pressure from 2 defenders. There was a late change for Eddie Howe's outfit to seal the win when Dan Gosling picked out a good run by Adam Smith, who teed up Ryan Fraser at the front post, but he dragged it wide. And then a final push for an encapsulated Palace afternoon as Boris saved a Lee shot and Joe Ward seemed destined to tuck home the rebound by a superb drive by Cook, but it was blocked away. It looked as though it was going to be another frustrating day at the office for the Eagles, but they finally got the breakthrough in the nick of time. Punchin and Benteke combined on the edge of the box, and the winger crossed to Scott Dann to plant a perfect header past the helpless Boris to snatch a dramatic draw. So now you've heard the match report, now we're going to move on to some positives, negatives and also 5 things we've learnt from the game. This game of 2 halves saw a well-organised and clinical Bournemouth take a deserved first half lead, while Crystal Palace toyed with a 4-4-2 formation that just didn't work. With a modified 4-3-3 approach after the break, Palace made the second period their own, but struggled to make any more chances count until Scott Dann scored the equaliser with a wonderful late header. Some positives from the game. Christian Benteke made his league debut, and while he didn't score, he showed why the club paid a record-breaking £27 million fee for him. His contribution, especially in the second half, helped give an edge that deserved more than a late equaliser. Palace's second half performance was also an indicator that they are capable of better performances than the ones seen in the opening two defeats. Now for some negatives from the game. Alan Pardew linked up with Benteke and Connor Wickham as a forward pairing, and while the intent was clear, the reality was 45 minutes of being overrun. While Pardew changed his formation to 4-3-3, it made a telling difference, giving the defence more cover, the midfield more support, and the attack better service. Additionally, Pardew must now designate a penalty taker. Even when Yohan Cabaye has scored, he hasn't been entirely convincing, and Saturday's miss should be the final straw. Now 5 things we have learned from the game. Mandanda is looking a great acquisition. Steve Mandanda proved today what a fantastic signing he is. The main reason he didn't start in the team sooner seems to be because of his language skills, which seem to have been improved now enough for him to be in the starting lineup. Of course, Hennessy being ruled out forced the manager's hand a bit, but it would be difficult for the Frenchman to win his place back now, with Mandanda looking safe between the sticks and making some great saves, including a one-on-one save in the first half to deny Bournemouth a second goal on the counter-attack. Palace fans have already taken to him, shouting "Steve" at the Frenchman's every touch of the ball. Let's not forget now that he was a free transfer. Scott Dann's captaincy is justified. Some Palace fans are still upset about Milianek's departure, but there couldn't really be a better candidate to take the captain's armband from him. Scott Dann showed again just how he can be solid at the back and how important he can be at the other end of the field too. He got one against Bournemouth in midweek and scored a vital one today right at the death, heading superbly beyond Aruc Boric, who could only look in despair. Given England's dismay during Euro 2016, it might be an idea to have another look at the man whose name has been on the fringes of the England international realms in the past. He scored an incredible 9 goals in total last season and doesn't look to be slowing down in this one, with 2 already to his name. Number 3. This team is Dr. Gerald and Mr. Hike. It's fair to say we have seen Crystal Palace's best and worst performances so far this season in one game. The first half display was quite possibly the worst the Eagles had played since the start of the campaign, being outrun, outmuscled and generally outplayed all over the pitch. In the second half they looked like a different team and were at the opponent's throats right from the let-go. It took the entire second period and a little more of the ball to finally hit the back of the net, but it was well deserved when it came. It might be much to say that this team is capable of beating anyone and losing to anyone, but the Crystal Palace from the second half could find themselves in the top half of the table fairly quickly, while if the team we saw in the first half shows up more often, we could be dragged deep into the relegation battle. Number 4. The manager's on thin ice, well, at least with the fans. This draw may have well saved Pardew from a more hostile reaction at the final whistle, like the one at half-time. But some of the online comments and anger outside the ground showed that there's a lot more of Crystal Palace fans unconvinced by their manager so far this season. Let's be fair, he has done some very good things for the club, including taking them to the FA Cup final, but midway through the match, almost all the fan feedback put the blame squarely on the manager's shoulders. There were fans calling for his dismissal too. You're only as good as the first game, and football fans can be very fickle. This is something Pardew seems to be finding out very quickly. Despite the late goal leaving a position on spin on things, it's still 1 point from the opening 3 matches, hardly an ideal start. The Eagles are still searching for that first win, and Palace fans are looking at the manager to make sure it arrives. Number 5. Benteke is looking good so far. Mandanda wasn't the only one making his league debut today. Christian Benteke also started his first league game for the club and played the entire 90 minutes, a good sign. He may not have scored but won the penalty. Could have had a second after the break, which looked more like a penalty than the first, and generally made it difficult for Bournemouth defenders. He will need a bit more time to get fully fit, but so far so good from the big Belgian, who must be delighted to be playing football again, something that he didn't get the chance to do at Liverpool. So now you've heard the match review, we're now going to move on to the player rankings, but before we start with them, don't forget to follow us on social media, on Twitter and Facebook at eCrystalPalace, to read all the latest news. And for all you Facebook users out there, don't forget to check our Facebook group so you can join in with discussions, read the latest news, and obviously post your own opinions. So that's a really good thing if you do want to get in contact with other fans regarding things that happen during the game. The Facebook group is definitely the place to go, or even the YouTube comments, because on there you can write your own opinion and see what others thought of it. But certainly, if you do want to contact us, try Twitter and Facebook, obviously at eCrystalPalace, and we'll get in contact back to you. But enough of that, we're now going to start with the player rankings, and starting in goal with Steve Mandanda, I am going to give him an 8. There was little he could do for Josh King's goal, but one save midfield through the half kept Palace in the game. His distribution, whether kicking or thrown, was excellent. He could well be the club's signing of the season. So obviously Steve Mandanda there, he's already a fan's favourite, hence why I gave the chant when I announced his name. And to be honest, it was his first league game for the club, and what they debut. Yes, he didn't keep a clean sheet, but he had a fantastic game, whether it would be the saves he made, whether it be the distribution, but everything about his whole game was very good, and a well-deserved 8 in my opinion, just for an overall solid performance and a very good debut for him. But obviously, I've just read there in the description, Josh King's goal, 9 minutes into the game. There couldn't really much he could do about that. Obviously, the ball came into the area. It was a very tight angle. He did stretch out and try to get the ball, but obviously his arm wasn't quite long enough to get it. But the fact that he actually tried to save it shows glimpses of how powerful he is as a goalkeeper, because he will try and save every ball that comes into him. And you know what? We can't really blame him for that, because, you know, it was a very good goal from Josh King, you know. Brilliant shot right into the bottom corner. Obviously, Mandanda couldn't quite stretch out to get it. But obviously, the first half for Palace was not a very weak half for us. But obviously, Steve kept us in the game with a lovely save from Callum Wilson. Obviously, he was on the counter-attack, linking up with the other striker. Steve Mandanda stayed strong, claimed the ball when he was just about to have a shot on goal. And obviously, we were able to clear the ball from his throw-in. And, you know, the fact that he was able to be strong and be powerful and actually go in and grab the ball from his feet is amazing. And that's what we've missed from a keeper. Someone who's not scared of the ball and not scared of going in tackles to try and get the ball off of a player. And if it weren't for that, we would have been 2-0 down at half-time. And I don't think we would have been able to come back into the game. But obviously, talking about his distribution from that save, in the whole game as a whole, his distribution, kicking, throwing was absolutely fantastic. You know, that's what helped us set up counter-attacks. You know, he would get the ball. Obviously, everyone's chanting his name, and he would throw the ball out and start up a counter-attack. So actually, yes, it's good that he's doing that because it's helping us to start counter-attacks. But the fact that he's setting up the counter-attacks is uplifting the atmosphere, let's say, because obviously we have got some very good attacking players. But you know what? If he carries on doing this, and hopefully, I think he'll probably get the first team goalkeeper spot. But if he carries on like this, I don't see why not we could call him the signing of the summer. Because considering we've got him on a free, and this is, I'm not going to say a world-class goalkeeper, because he hasn't ever hit that heights, but certainly he's one of the top-end goalkeepers in the world. And the fact that he's at Palace, hopefully with him playing in the team, he can help us get a few more points this season. But overall, a pretty decent, solid performance from Steve Mandanda, and one of the nominations for signing of the season. Now to move on to the back line, and I'm going to start with the right back, Joe Ward, and I'm going to give him a 6. Nervous in the first half, but his performance in the second was better. Providing service into Wilfried Zaha and crosses into the box was far better. His form has been alarming, though, and it's quite likely that Palace will look to strengthen in that position. So obviously, as I'm recording this, the window has slammed shut, and Palace have not brought in another right back. But I personally think, based on this performance and the fact that we've got Kelly and Tompkins who can play in a role, I don't think it's much of an issue. But Joe Ward, like most of the team, he's a bit nervous in the first half. He was a bit sluggish with his passing, his possession. But obviously, like all the other players, grew into the game as it went on. He was much better in the second half. And I think the fact that Wilfried Zaha came on did actually help him, because he was able to, because he normally plays with Zaha on that right hand side or left hand side, whatever side Ward's on at the time. He's able to get a nice partnership there, providing passes to Zaha, service to him, as well as getting decent crosses into the box. And obviously, like I said, it got much better as the game went on. But you know, his form, he hasn't been as good as he's been sort of the peak of last season. But you know, it's not like we're going to drop him out of the squad, because he still shows glimpses of why he's still in the team. The fact that he can link up well with players like Zaha and get the crosses into the box. But we know we can't have a player like him who we know can have good games. We can't have him coming in and out of games. So we've got to try and see more from Ward, him sort of doing decent performances throughout the whole game. And hopefully, if he can carry on providing service to the wingers and putting crosses into the box, you know, I can see him in the squad, because he's very good at it, and he just needs to try and do it more in the game, and hopefully that will, you know, up his form. But you know what? Not the best performance from him, but you can't really fault him for anything in the game, because when he did do something, and when he had possession, he didn't really panic as he's done in the past, and he was able to act calmly about it. But not the best performance from him, but certainly not the worst. But now to move on to the centre-back, Damien Delaney, and I'm going to give him a 6. Struggled to compete with the lively King and Callum Wilson in the first half, committing senseless fouls and panicking when in possession. But as the rest of the side, his performance improved as the game went on. So obviously Damien Delaney, we know he isn't the fastest player in the team, so we can't expect him to be competing very well with the likes of King and Wilson. But you know, he did do that, let's say he did do that well, because obviously we didn't concede any goals from these two attacking threats, so I suppose that's a good thing to do. He managed to contain the two most attacking threats from the team. But the thing I noted about his game is he drifted out of position quite a lot. So sometimes maybe Papa Swai, Joe Ward were pushing up more, trying to go on the counter, and Damien Delaney would drift in wide, which is good, covering the position, but then that leaves a gap in the sort of centre defensive role. But you know what? He did, when he went out of the thing, because there was gaps in the team, he committed quite a lot of senseless fouls, to be honest, which obviously one of them resulted in a goal. So, you know, we know he's a centre-back. He needs to stay at centre-back. We don't, you know, I know there's a space at right-back or left-back when there's a counter-attack, but he needs to try and stay in position, because he's not used to that role, and that's why he was committing so many senseless fouls, because he was panicking at the fact that he had left space, so he had to get the player down. So I think in order for him to improve his performance against Bournemouth, he would have had to stay in position more. But in saying that, like all of the other players, he grew into the game, and, you know, he was panicking a bit in possession. That's why he was committing the fouls. But overall, like, his performance improved as the game went on. And it's very hard to explain it. If I've confused any of you, do contact us, because it's a very hard subject to explain. But generally, the reason he didn't have the best of games is because he was drifting out of position too many times. And that meant he was committing senseless fouls to protect the space that he had left open. But overall, you know, he's done an alright job managing to contain the two most attacking threats. But in the next game, he needs to try and stay in position and stop committing senseless fouls. Now to move on to the captain and the goal scorer, Scott Dann, and I am going to give him an 8. Scored the equaliser that Palace so richly deserved, and didn't put a foot wrong during the entire game. He also had a header cleared off the line, underlining what a wonderful asset he is from dead ball situations. So Scott Dann is the hero again. He scored another goal, so if you do include the goal he scored against Blackpool, not as an own goal, but as his. He scored 2 goals this season. Top goal scorer. And once again, the captain has come to the rescue. You know, like I said there, we did, the second half, we were so good. We were dominant. We were putting in crosses into the box. In fact, the game overall, we had 24 shots on target. And I think Bournemouth only had about 10. So we're not normally good at creating chances, but we created 24 chances in that game. So, and none of them came to anything. So it was really deserved. It was really, richly deserved that Dan managed to get the goal. And what a wonderful header, you know, punching with a lovely cross into the head of Dan, and a lovely, powerful header right from the edge of the area into the top left-hand corner. So a lovely, lovely goal there. And to be honest, it just underlines what a wonderful asset he is from dead ball situations. Yes, we know he's a good defender, and admittedly, that's what we need. We need players who can defend well. But if you've got someone who's very good from corners or from free kicks, we need them in the team, because with him, I'm sure we can score a lot of goals. But like I said, as a defender, he done nothing wrong. Put in lovely tackles, lovely blocks. And also, you know, he had a header cleared off the line. So he could have scored 2 goals in that game. But obviously, unluckily for him, he only got the 1 goal, which did help Palace get the draw. But to be honest, it's just so wonderful that we've got a player with his ability and his calibre that can defend but also attack very well. And to be honest, I'm so happy now the transfer window's shut that he stayed at Palace, because hopefully as the captain he can grow into the role, get a better player, and hopefully score a few more goals. But like I said, brilliant defensive performance from him. It was richly deserved that he got the goal, and it just underlines the fact that how wonderful he is from dead ball situations. But now to move on to Papa Soare, who's one of these debatable ones, so do drop a comment below if you think this is maybe overrating him a bit. But I have put him on the shortlist for the man of match, so it'd be interesting to see what people have to say. But I am going to give Papa Soare a 7. Whilst this first half performance wasn't convincing, he was a constant threat throughout the second, providing support for Jason Puncheon and Wickham. His service into the box kept Bournemouth on the back foot. So Papa Soare, this is the case with most of the players, that his first half performance wasn't very good, wasn't really convincing. But, that speech that Pardew done at half-time obviously worked, because he came out and in the second half he was a constant threat, providing lovely support for Puncheon and Wickham, which Ward was doing very well. Also, he put in a few decent crosses into the area, which we know he can do, obviously with his left foot, very nice left foot there. And obviously that service, that continuous service of crosses, resulted in us having the 24 shots on goal. And obviously that put Bournemouth under a lot of pressure, because all the crosses are coming in and they had to defend them, because the likes of Wickham, Benteke would get on the end of them. So, the fact that he was creating these chances which were putting Bournemouth under pressure was fantastic. And, similar to Ward, although he didn't have the best half, or the first half wasn't very good for him, second half was a lot better. And, as a whole, very good defensive performance from him. And Papa Soare is one of these defenders that you normally see who's more attacking. But in this game, he was more relaxed. He balanced he balanced it between defensive roles and the attacking roles. And when he did attack, like I said, he was a constant threat on that side. And I'm thinking at the moment that if, say, one of our wingers do get injured, like what happened last season, I don't see why not. We could pay Papa Soare out wide and bring Kelly in for him, and have, the back four of, the fullbacks is Kelly and Ward, with the two centre-backs, Dan and whoever Pardew decides to have. I don't see why not. Papa Soare couldn't play in that attacking role, or that wing role, because the crosses were decent and lots of support. So hopefully he can grow into that role and be a more of a constant threat in every game going forward. But the final thing really I wanted to say about Papa Soare was he almost scored. He's one of these players that I want to score goals, because he hasn't scored a goal for Palace yet. I would really, except in pre-season, but we're not including pre-season. But he's a really good player. He's always providing players, so it'd be nice for him to get a goal. And he almost got a goal. The ball was whipped into the area, deflected off one of the Bournemouth defenders. He managed to get his head on it, and the player who was right in front of him almost scored an own goal from that. So Papa Soare, he's showing glimpses now. Obviously, after fixing out the balance between defending and attacking, he's now showing glimpses of his headering ability as well. And when I talk about the goals he scored, he's only scored one for Palace, which was in pre-season, and that was a lovely header 2 years ago against Fulham. So he almost scored there with another header, but unluckily for us, the Bournemouth defender did manage to eventually clear it, but he almost did score an own goal from that. But Papa Soare, a very good performance from him defensively and offensively, and was one of the constant threats throughout the game. So now to move on to Jason Puncheon, and I am going to give him a 7. Initially started as a number 10 role, but spent most of the second half playing deeper alongside Cabaye. Despite that, he created the most chances, and his cross for Dan's goal was an excellent one. So Jason Puncheon, in the last few games, he's been playing as a defensive midfielder, but in this game, because with MacArthur coming back in, Pardew decided just to change the team up a bit, and they put Puncheon into one of his more comfortable roles, which was the number 10, and he'd done that pretty well. But like the most of the team, he weren't really good in the first half, and that resulted in him having a tactical change at half time, which meant that in the second half he went back to playing deep, and he did that very well, because we're seeing more with Puncheon now as he's going older, that he might not necessarily be getting faster, obviously with his age, so he's not really much more of an attacking threat, but we're seeing more of his defensive roles. And we saw that last season where he would track back and defend, but now we're seeing it where he can partner with Cabaye and do a defensive role for that. But you know what? When he was linking up with Soare, he was playing very well. He was providing chances into the area. And, although his first half wasn't very good, in that time, as the number 10, he did provide a few chances for Palace. And obviously, in the second half, playing alongside Cabaye, I said this in a few podcasts ago, that sometimes when you have your two defensive midfielders, you would have one pushing up, and in this game, or in this case, it was Jason Puncheon. So Jason Puncheon was the defensive midfielder who was pushing up, and obviously that resulted in him putting in a decent cross for Dan's goal. Obviously, doing 1-2 passing with Christian Benteke, got the ball into him. Lovely, I believe it was on his right foot. Lovely curved ball into Dan, and obviously Dan scored that. So Jason Puncheon, a pretty decent performance from him considering he was playing out of role for most of the game. But like all of the players, and I'm going to say this quite a lot in this podcast, you know, he didn't start very well. Obviously not playing in his most comfortable position, which he's been playing most of this season. But he slowly grew into the game and was providing more and more chances as the game went on. And obviously one of them resulted in a goal. But a decent performance from Jason Puncheon, and hopefully we can see more of this from him this season. Now to move on to Yohan Cabaye, who I'm going to give a 6. Clearly lacking match sharpness, Cabaye's game will be remembered for a poor penalty, but he deserves credit for his role in the second half turnaround. His distribution and temperament helped push Bournemouth back into their own half and kept Palace on the front foot. So obviously, we've been talking about this the last few weeks. Yohan Cabaye hasn't really been up to match fitness, and I personally said that I thought he was up to match fitness, but obviously that was him coming on the pitch for 20 minutes as a substitution. And obviously this game did highlight a little bit that he was lacking the match fitness a bit. But although he was lacking it, he did do a lot in the defensive role throughout the game, obviously putting in a shift there, and obviously that resulted in the second half turnaround. His contribution to the game meant that Bournemouth were kept in their own half for most of the game, and that's thanks to Cabaye, to be honest, because as doing that defensive role, he was able to contain Bournemouth, and that resulted in us obviously getting the second half turnaround where we were able to push Bournemouth back and put chance after chance after chance. And obviously Cabaye did miss a penalty after Christian Benteke's shirt was pulled in the box, which debatably is a soft penalty, but under new Premier League rules that is a penalty, so I'm not going to moan about that. But you know, he shouldn't really be taking penalties. It's debatable, because the last one penalty he took against Newcastle, he did miss that one, so I don't see why he was taking it. But to be honest, if you've got a striker on the pitch, and at that time we had 2 strikers on the pitch, I don't see why defensive midfielders should be taking it when you've got this 2 strikers on the pitch that could take them. We have Wickham, scored a penalty last season, very powerful shot. No way the keeper would have saved it. Same with Benteke, he scored a penalty against Palace last season. So I don't see why these 2 strikers couldn't have taken a penalty, because they would have had powerful strikes into the area and we would have been done with that. And Cabaye, yes, Cabaye's had some good penalties his time at Palace, but you know, this penalty, same as the one in Newcastle, there wasn't very much power on it, so the goalkeeper had slightly more time to react to it, and he was able to save it. And to be honest, it was a good save by Boric. But, you know, Cabaye should be doing better with that. You know, he should be putting more power on that and accuracy to make sure it goes in. But in the future, I think Pardew said this after the game, that there's going to be now a designated penalty taker who's probably going to be a striker. But hopefully they get that sorted out. We'll get someone who's designated to take penalties, and hopefully that'll be a striker, because we know that they've got accuracy and power, and that will probably win us more penalties. But like I said, his game will probably be remembered for the penalty, but you know, like I said before I started talking about the penalty, he does deserve credit, because in the second half he turned the game around, he put in a shift in that defensive role, meaning he can contain the Bournemouth players, as well as getting forward on a few occasions, putting a few decent passes and crosses, and all in all, a way to describe his performance is he kept Palace on the front foot. But all in all, not the best performance for Yohan Cabaye, but certainly he did put in a shift in the second half. And he does rightly deserve the 6, but hopefully he won't be taking penalties anymore. But that's a story for another podcast. But now to move on to his fellow partner in the defensive midfield, James McArthur. And I am going to give him a 7. He is also struggling for fitness. Playing as a number 10 role is not a typical role, but his tackling in Bournemouth's defensive area kept the pressure on and ensured the visitors didn't have a chance to settle. So for James McArthur, similar to Yohan Cabaye in the fact that he's struggling for fitness, and obviously we know that because he's just come back from 6 months of an injury. But you know what? He swapped around with Puncheon quite a lot in the game, and he did play as a number 10 role. And we have seen last season, especially the 5-1 win at Selhurst Park against Newcastle, that where James McArthur can play in that role, because he's able to hold the ball up well, he's able to do twists and turns, his passing is fantastic. And obviously he did put in a lot of tackles, which meant he could get past players and get the ball into the box and put pressure on Bournemouth. And he done that very well. But personally, I know he isn't struggling for fitness, but I would have liked to see him in a defensive role, because I think that would have meant that someone like Punchin could go forward more and add a bit more of an attacking threat. But you know what? Where he was putting in lovely tackles into the area, putting lovely passes in and out of the area, it meant that Bournemouth didn't have a chance to settle, and that ultimately led to us dominating most of the game, and that's obviously excluding the first half. So, you know, we know he's struggling for fitness, so we know we can't expect wonderful, world-class things from James McArthur. But, you know, it wasn't the best game he had for Palace, but certainly seeing him play in a different role, we can see that he can put in a shift, he can adapt, and that ultimately led to him, you know, playing or having an influence on the game and helping us to get the goal back. But all in all, a pretty good attacking and defensive duty game from James McArthur, and hopefully he can build up his fitness for the games coming up. But now to move on to Connor Wickham, who I'm going to give a 6. Wickham initially started as the leading striker ahead of Benteke, but with the tactic proving ineffective and Palace's midfield being overrun, was then moved to the wing role midway through the first half. It later made sense for Pardew to substitute him for a natural winger, Zaha. So obviously, Connor Wickham, he started I'll stop with Connor Wickham, but Pardew started the game in something that was a cross between a 4-4-2 and a 4-4-1-1 formation. And obviously in that formation, you always have a striker who plays in front of the other striker. And in this case, it was Connor Wickham. So obviously he played in front of Benteke. But, you know, that tactic didn't really work because they're almost too similar of players. You know, they're both not too fast. They're both reasonably fast. They're both very good at hold-up play. So that sort of didn't work because they were too like each other. And that meant that they couldn't gel together more. And obviously that tactic proved ineffective, and that's why Palace's midfield was being overrun, because instead of having 5 players in the midfield, we sort of went for having 4 and then having one or having an extra person up front. But you know, when Pardew changed it and he put Punchin further back and then moved Connor Wickham to the wing, we saw a change in the game. And obviously when he was at Sunderland, he used to play down the wing, and we could see glimpses of why he could play there, because he was putting in decent crosses, he was using his hold-up play to pass the ball back into the middle to get the ball forward, and he done that very well. But, you know, it made sense that Pardew substituted him because he isn't a natural winger, and if the 4-4-2 formation isn't going to work, him and Benteke, then we've got to change it up. And, you know, Pardew was right to do that because the player he brought on in Wolf Zaha was a fantastic player. He made a complete difference on the game, and ultimately he was one of the reasons why this second half turnaround resulted in us getting a goal. But honestly, considering that the formation didn't really work for Connor Wickham, he still put in a nice shift, good hold-up play, good attacking threats throughout the game, and ultimately, if he had been playing up front, I think he maybe would have got a few goals. But one of the things to highlight about him, you may have heard that in the match report, is that when a corner came in, he was able to get on the end of it, and he just kicked it just over the bar. So the fact that, you know, he can drift inside, and from a corner, he's also a threat, whether it be with his head or his feet. So he's showing glimpses of why he could be the number 1 striker starting for Palace. But based on this performance, I think that if we're going to play with 1 striker, probably going to keep with Benteke for the minute. But if we are going to play with 2, we've just got to help Connor Wickham adapt to that system. But certainly, the fact that he's adaptable and can move from the wing and move into the middle just shows how good of a player he is. But hopefully, he can settle into whether it will be a wing role or a double striker formation. But hopefully, like I said, he'll settle into either one of them roles, and hopefully that will help him to develop more as a player and get more goals, of course, because he had a brace last season where he scored about 5 goals. So hopefully he can continue that into this season. But now to move on to his fellow partner up front, and that is Christian Benteke, and I am going to give him a 7. The Belgium striker's hold-up play, ability to create chances for himself, and general work with the midfielders and wingers shows why Palace played so much for him. If there is one negative, it is that his weak clearance from the corner led to Bournemouth taking the early lead in the first half. So Christian Benteke had an absolutely fantastic game for Palace. Obviously didn't get on the score sheet, but everything else he done was fantastic, and that's why I've given him a 7. And to be honest, his hold-up play, like Wickham, was fantastic. He was able to get a pass in from the edge of the area. He'll get the ball there from that pass, hold it up and wait for some support. And obviously with him holding up the play, he had the ball, he had the ability to create a lot of chances for himself, managed to get a few shots away a few times, and just to be honest, his general work, he had a very good work ethic about him, and I think that's because he's happy to be playing, because at Liverpool he weren't really playing many games, and I think he's come to Palace now, he's the main man, he's going to be playing probably every week, so I think it's going to really up his work ethic. And you know, because he worked well with the midfielders and the wingers, you know, it meant that we were able to get a few chances, and that's probably one of the reasons why Palace had 24 shots in the game. The fact that Benteke was working and linking up well with the wingers and midfielders to create chances, and I think that's one of the main reasons why that happened throughout the game. But you know, he's showing why Palace play so much for him, because he's the full package. He isn't just a striker who scores goals. Yes, we want him to score goals, and I'm sure he will. But the main thing about him is that he does everything else as well. Obviously, hold up play, creating chances, working with the other players. But, you know, the only thing to criticise him for is that he didn't really clear, or he didn't have a very good clearance in the first half to clear for the Bournemouth goal. But we can't really fault him for that, because he's not really someone who should be defending. He's a striker. He should be playing up front, and he's the one who should be chasing down balls that are in the area. So you can't really blame him for that. But if there is one thing to pick up about his performance, that is probably the fact that he could have done better with that clearance. But overall, as his first debut for Palace, the Premier League debut, it was a pretty good game for him. And if he can carry on with his fantastic hold-up play, his ability to create chances from hardly anything, and just his general teamwork, the fact that he would work with other players in the team, I'm sure that he'll get goals for Palace, and I can see him being a crucial, integral part of our plans this season. But all in all, a well-deserved 7 for him. There's nothing really else he could have done in the game, because everything he done was spot on. Now to move on to the winger, Andros Townsend, and I'm going to give him a 6. Touches of quality were crucially undermined by a lack of defensiveness when it came to crossing positions. Despite that, he worked on the left wing with energy and directness. So obviously Andros Townsend is one of the players in the squad who always is always a constant 6 and 7. He always has good games. He's always one of these players who has a very good work ethic about him, and they'll always put him the same amount of effort every game, and will give to team what they expect of him. And you know, he gave everything in that game, which was expected of him. And yes, a few of his crosses were not very good, but one of the crosses he had, and you probably heard that in the match report, he crossed it into the area from the right, and it sort of bounced, or it sort of glided in such a way that it almost went in the top corner. So if the goalkeeper Boric wouldn't have been there, that probably would have been a fantastic goal from at least probably about 30 yards. But, you know, we can't just rely on him to take long shots. We need some of his crosses to not be shots. We want them to be crosses into the area so Benteke can get his head on them. And a few times, he pinged in a few decent balls into the area, which the likes of Benteke, Wickham could get their heads on. And that resulted in us having the 24 shots on goal. But all in all, you know, he needs to try and be more consistent with that. And that's the only thing about him, really. We know he's good at crossing. He just needs to try and do it in games now. But, you know, he's got to try, and talking about crossing in general, he just needs to try and do better positions for crossing. Like, maybe sometimes with his crossing, he should try and run to the byline and cross the ball sort of out of the area, let's say, so a player can run onto it and have a shot, rather than him going just over the halfway line and crossing it into the area. So maybe he needs to work on his tactics, or the way he's going to deliver the crosses, so he could become a better player. But all in all, you know, on that left wing and the right wing, where he was throughout the different parts of the game, he done that role with lots of energy, directness, obviously chasing down defenders, putting in the crosses, putting in the passes. And overall, you know, not the best performance from him we've seen so far, but certainly he done what we expected of him. He put in a shift on the left-hand side with energy, directness, and also crossing. But, you know, like I said, he needs to improve on the crossing. And one thing I do take from this game is that he was less greedy on the ball than he has been in some of the other games. So clearly he's been listening to the podcast. But now to move on to the 3 substitutions, obviously Wilf Zaha, Chung Eung Lee and Martin Kelly. So 2 of the substitutions I will give ratings for. The other, in Martin Kelly, I won't give rating for, because he was just brought on just before the final whistle for Joe Ward. And I think that was only I think it was mainly for fitness, because Joe Ward, we know he hasn't had the best form recently. So just bringing in Martin Kelly, just to keep Martin Kelly up the fitness, and also to keep Joe Ward's fitness. But obviously, 2 substitutions, Wolf Zaha and Chong Lee. Obviously, Wolf Zaha I'm going to give an 8. Showed focus and confidence after a week of transfer speculation and provide a constant threat down the right. Zaha created a number of clear chances with his running, though his teammates failed to make any of them count. So obviously, Wolf Zaha, he came off the bench, and although all the transfer speculation about him joining Spurs, that didn't affect him. His mind was set on the game, and if you're going to talk about an impact sub, and I use that word quite often, he was the impact sub. He was a constant threat down the right hand flank. He was providing chances into the air, chance after chance after chance. Obviously, he ran past a few players on a few occasions, managed to get a few crosses in, and overall, just a pretty decent performance from him. And I don't see why, seeing that the speculation didn't affect him, I didn't see why he could have started. But obviously, Pardew took that chance. He said, I'm not going to risk the speculation affecting his performance, so he put him on the bench. But, it clearly didn't show that the speculation had changed it. And to be honest, talking on the transfer, I don't see why Spurs would have needed him anyway, because Spurs have already got loads of attacking players, so I don't see how Zaha would have helped them. And he probably would have been like United, he would have been sat on the bench. So Palace is the best place for him. Obviously, he's loved here by the fans. He started in the academy, so it makes sense for him to stay here. And some may say he's Palace in and out, and in his heart, I think he is. But I don't think it changed him. And the fact that Spurs put in a bid of 12 million, it's a bit laughable, to be honest. If they rate Moussa Sissoko for £30 million, then I'm sure Wolf Zaha is rated about the same, 30 million. So the fact they put that there is just to try and change his mind and affect him. But it clearly didn't. He's a strong-minded person, Zaha, and that didn't affect him. But he was a constant threat down that right-hand side, running down the flanks, doing all stuff, just doing everything you would want a winger to do. And unlike Townsend, he provided chance after chance. His crosses were superb. And also one of the things he does now is drift inside and try and cut inside. And he's done that very well in this game. But although he put in decent crosses, it's just whether any of his teammates could take them. And I think in order for him to improve, I think he's just going to carry on what he's doing and have a word with his teammates to maybe get the timing better so that they can get the end of the crosses. But certainly, the second half revival, let's say, from Palace, he was one of the main reasons for that, because he was providing more of the chances, and ultimately that led to us having the 24 shots on target. But moving on to the final player who I'm going to discuss today, that is Chong Lee, and I am going to give him a 7. Like Zaha, his introduction brought a burst of creativity and attacking intent. Lee created a number of chances, the best of which was a cross to the far post that Suarez failed to take advantage of. So obviously, like Zaha, I'm not going to go into too much detail about Lee Chung-yong because it was basically exactly the same as Zaha. He brought a lot of energy, attacking intent, and obviously creativity into the game. And that's what Palace had been missing in the first half. But obviously, like Zaha, he created a lot of chances throughout the game, whether that be putting crosses in, finding a simple pass in the centre of midfield, and obviously one of them being the cross that he put into Suarez. So now I did say when I was talking about Suarez, I didn't know who put in the cross, but now I've remembered Lee Chung-yong put in that cross, deflected off a Bournemouth player. He went to put a head on it, and then the Bournemouth player almost mucked it up for an own goal. But all in all, these substitutions came on to be impact subs, and they've done that very well. They had good attacking intent, great creativity, and also showed a lot of energy and added a lot more to the game. Now to move on to the man of the match award, but before I do that and give you my man of the match and who I thought had the most influence on the game, I'm just going to give you the results of my Twitter poll and obviously the 4 nominations for the man of the match award, and obviously they are Steve Mandanda, Scott Dann, Papa Soiree and Christian Benteke. So if any of you do want to vote on the Twitter poll, it's not run by equaliser Palace, it's actually run on my own personal Twitter account, which is at the CPC podcast. Every week I post obviously the polls after the game, so you can vote for your man of the match. But I also do post some news on there, so if you want to give me a follow, you keep up to date with all the latest news. But obviously, I've given you the 4 nominations. In 4th place with 8% of the votes was Papa Soiree. In 3rd place with 12% of the votes was Christian Benteke. In 2nd place with 23% of the votes was Steve Mandanda. which means with over half the votes, with 57% of the votes, and winner of the Man of the Match award for the game against Bournemouth is the captain, Scott Dann. So congratulations, Scott Dann, on what was a very solid performance from you. But like I said, and like I say every week, you don't get a trophy or certificate, but you do get my sincere congratulations on what was a very solid performance from you, and hopefully we can see more of that from you. Obviously, now I want to give you my own personal man of the match, and normally I don't go against the poll, and I think this week I'm probably going to go with the poll because I think Scott Dann, if a player scores a goal that wins you the draw, almost in the 93rd minute, I think you've got to give it to the player who scores the goal. And if the player, obviously in this case Scott Dann, had a very good game overall, which he did defensively, I think you've got to give it to him. So I am going to give it to Scott Dann, but obviously I'm still going to give you a little explanation to why I gave it to each of the players. Obviously, Steve Mandanda made crucial saves throughout the game and his distribution was fantastic. Scott Dann, very good defensive job, very good in the air, and also got the crucial goal. And when I say very good in the air, obviously he scored the goal from the air, but he also did got a header from a corner cleared off the line. So obviously a good aerial presence from Scott Dann. Obviously Papa Soiree, one of the best attacking threats, putting in crosses, putting in passes into the area. Also had a header from a Lee Chung-yong cross, almost scored from that. But also, overall, a very good defensive performance from him. And obviously, Christian Benteke, on his debut for the club, his hold at play was fantastic. His general knowledge of the players around him was fantastic. His aerial presence was fantastic as well. And I think another thing is it's just his overall performance. I think the reason I put him on there, so hold up play, ability to create chances, and just his general work in general, working with all the different players around him. But they're the reason I gave it to all of these players and I nominated them. And to be honest, this is one of the first weeks where no one commented on who else they thought should have won the award. So I think I got this quite right. And people may say that Punchin should have been on there, maybe Chong Lee. But obviously these players, Punchin, he was non-existent almost in the first half, so you can't really put him on there. Same with Lee Chung-yong. Obviously he came on halfway through the second half. You can't really rate him on that when these four players have been consistent for basically the whole game. But overall, most of the team put in a pretty solid performance, excluding the first half. But obviously these players shined for me, obviously because of their work ethic was fantastic, and just what they gave to the team as well. Obviously Steve Mandanda being the man who was saving everything, Scott Dann being the one doing the defensive and aerial threat, Papa Soiree being the one defending and being attacking, and obviously Christian Benteke for having that presence up front. But obviously that was my man of the match. So obviously if you do have a different opinion to me, if you're watching on YouTube, drop a comment below the video. And if you do think someone else should have got my man of the match award, or someone else should have been on the playlist or on the shortlist, do contact us on Facebook and Twitter at Crystal Palace. And if you want, even contact me at the CPC podcast, so I can hear what you had to think or what you thought about the man of the match. But obviously, so now you've heard the match report, player rankings, and my man of the match. That concludes this week's podcast. Now I've got an exclusive interview with Alan Pardew, Scott Dann, and Christian Benteke following the game.
Alan, you must be delighted with the way your players fought all the way to the end.
Well, listen, we're making changes and we're trying to play a different way. In the first half, we couldn't get it together. It was all over the place. And then we got a penalty, which was a break, really. If we scored that, perhaps we'd have stood on them and gone on and had a better end to that half. But we didn't. We missed it. We took a step back. Wow, we was in trouble. Only the goalie who made a magnificent save for us kept it 1-0. Half time, I purposely never made any changes. I thought it was important that we stuck with the 11 that didn't play so well to show that we're much, much better than that. And they did. And our fans stayed with us. They were absolutely brilliant today. I even heard Super Owl chant get booed today at some stage. That's where we were. And it takes brave players to get on the ball at that time. And Punch got on it, and Kabai, and Zaha come on and started going at people. Suddenly we looked like we could get not just one but 3 or 4 goals. 20 shots, I think, at the goal. We still know we've got to get our goal scoring boots on. Took the captain to put that right. But there's no more than we deserved. Now, not just the football team, by the way. myself and my staff, we put a lot of work into this period that has been very difficult for us with all the changes that haven't been made perhaps as quick as we would have liked. And our fans, who I have to say was outstanding today.
You mentioned Steve's save, but also his distribution, him getting the ball out really quickly. Is that one of the things you were really looking for from him?
That's why I brought him to the football club. We're going to change style. The other goalies need to learn from him. And what he did at the end, taking it up to the halfway line and putting it on the money in the box, is sort of thing that he knows, he experienced. This is a guy who's played a lot of games with ball, and I think he'll play for France this week. Probably could be our best signing, but we'll see.
And the other signing, Benteke made his league debut today. He seemed to win everything in the air.
Yeah, a little bit rusty here and there, but he will get better, and we'll get better around him. He'll free up a few players. Lot to be encouraged about by the second half, and the first half a little lesson for us in our confidence levels and to trust that we in what we're doing.
Thank you, Scott. Never in doubt.
I mean, we thought it was never going to come in the end. We had so many chances in that second half that it just didn't seem if it was going to go in. Numerous chances cleared off the line, but thankfully one went in. We ended up with a point, and I think at the end of the first half we probably would have took that because we wasn't good enough. We need to be better. We need to show more of what we were capable of, like we did in the second half.
What do you think wasn't quite working in the first half?
It's hard to put your finger on it, really. There's quite a lot of things what we could have done better as a team, as individuals. It's something we're going to have to look at. We had the chat at half time, changed formation slightly, and seemed to help us. Got our ball players on the ball, got the ball, more quality balls up to Christian, who looked a real handful in the second half, and we looked as if we were going to score and create, and that's what we were hoping for at the start of the game. But like I say, it's pretty much a game of two halves.
You scored a few headers. Do you reckon that's one of your best ones?
Probably, yeah. It was nice that it finally went in, and it was an important one, I think. We needed to get a point on the board at least today to get our season going, and hopefully we can go on from here. And I think after the first half, I think the fans gave us a lift as well. They kept us going, and seeing that we were all in it and wanted to get back into the game, and we kept going, and I think that was down to them and the way they kept supporting us, and so big thank you to them as well.
Thanks, Scott. Enjoy your weekend.
Thanks a lot.
Cheers. Christian, congratulations on making your league debut for the club. You pleased with your performance?
Average, I will say, because of course I could have done better, but I just it was my first game since a long time, so I just getting back in shape, I will say, and then we took 1 point. It's better than the lose.
So do you feel like it's more sharpness than fitness you need to gain, or is it a bit of both?
I think a little bit both, but I think today I had the chance to play 90 minutes, and I felt at the end a little bit tired, but I'm closer to my best, so I'm really happy.
What did you make of the Selhurst Park crowd today?
Say again?
What did you make of the crowd today?
It was unbelievable atmosphere today, and especially the second half, they push us back, and we can be thankful to them because they help us to score the draw goal.
And the finish from Scott Dann, it was a striker's header.
Yeah, it was really. We know Scott since long time now. He used to score a lot of goals on set pieces. Now we had the chance to score during the game, and we can be really happy today. Got
a 2-week break now. Do you think the team will be back stronger in 2 weeks' time?
Yeah, I think the more important this afternoon was to get the 3 points, but unfortunately we didn't take the 3 points. But I think we show some good character in the second half, and we can look forward for the next of the season after the international break.
Thanks, Christian.
So there you have it. Now you've heard what Alan Pardew, Scott Dann and Christian Benteke had to say after the game. That concludes this week's podcast for the game against Bournemouth. But make sure to come back next week for my post-match review of the game against Middlesbrough. So thanks for watching, and remember to up the Palace.